My Life Me is a 2011 French-Canadian Teletoon original. This particular toon follows the life and times of aspiring teen manga artist Birch and her group of friends Liam, Rappy, and Sandra. The Wikipedia page sells the series as a manga-inspired slice-of-life comedy. There's far more emphasis on crazy high school hijinks than Birch's desires to become a mangaka, though this point is established well enough to set up general character motivations, plot threads, and jokes, such as Birch's teacher referring to manga as mango. Otherwise, the manga-inspired element shines through particularly in character design, scene transitions, and effects meant to convey a specific mood or effect. The scene transitions work well enough, but other additions, not so much. Mood effects, such as Amelia's pink fog and floating flower symbols, can come across as gaudy and obnoxious. It's excusable to feature this effect when she's first introduced, but afterwards, her character theme song works well enough. Plus, she scoffs, flips her hair, and applies lip gloss every time she comes on screen. So much so that it's iconic of her specifically. That's more than enough to convey the message of, she is a flippant, unlikable antagonist. Well, the show attempts to sell her as such, but it's questionable as to how much of an antagonist she is when compared to the main leads. Another feature are the random manga panels. When a character strikes a dramatic pose or tries to look heroic, their bottom half is covered by a black and white manga panel. Said panel features an interpretation of them in superhero gear, Shakespearean garb, or whatever is most thematically appropriate. The idea behind this is pretty clever, but the execution gets a bit awkward and clunky. Panels appear anywhere and anytime, interrupting scenes and breaking up any sense of normalcy, then sliding out just as quickly. It distorts the narrative, honestly, taking the viewer out of any sense of immersion they had going. Why not have the character strike a dramatic pose, then segue into a manga page and transition between panels of them in superhero gear or otherwise as a monologue? The point is to explore and emphasize a particular character's stream of thought. Or, if the show were more clever, Birch's given interpretation of them. A manga page would break up scenes less drastically, and tie in quite nicely with the show's given framework of, everything looks like a manga because Birch enjoys manga. Speaking of Birch, as a viewer, you'd think the toon took place from her perspective. Again, this would add significantly to the show's manga stylization, or rather, what looks like a 14-year-old's really clunky and first interpretations of a manga stylization. Instead, it's set up from a third-person perspective. Most of the characters are pretty bare bones. They have a few defining personality traits, and that's just about it. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Not every toon needs three-dimensional or even two-dimensional characters with a fleshed-out backstory and driving motivations. In the case of My Life Me, the goal is to create an entertaining animated teen sitcom. Popcorn entertainment with basic morals, if any at all. But even popcorn entertainment benefits greatly from a believable premise and clever writing. Where one of my biggest points of contention come in are in regards to how Pod 4 is set up, e.g. the main four leads. These four sell themselves as a cohesive, tight-knit group, but the toon doesn't sell this idea particularly well, except for the odd scene or two. Now, Birch's and Liam's friendship is the one exception. They have similar interests, share pretty open dialogue and communication, and as cousins, they have a long history together. Again, you don't need an incredibly in-depth backstory, just enough believable establishment to sell the general idea. Otherwise though, whenever two characters butt heads, they argue, storm off, then scheme behind each other's backs. They're more likely to pull a petty and childish stunt, or resort to blackmail rather than actually sitting and talking things out. You could argue that red-haired Sandra sat at the crux of this. She's incredibly ill-tempered and rude. She's not above insulting, mocking, and belittling her, air quotes, friends. For example, she's gone out of her way to try to bribe Birch with a con ticket for $50 in a year of being her personal slave. Yet, Birch and Liam have taken lowbrow shots at Sandra as well. Blackmail, pretending to be a secret admirer, etc. Now, ridiculous stunts and scheming aren't necessarily bad setups. It's just unnerving that these are the show's most common go-to for many plot resolutions and setups. My guess is that this stems from the show's attempts at subverting morals in a comedic way. Morals are easier to pull apart and pick at for entertaining effect when some of the characters are mean, rude, and just unlikable. Check out Dan Versus if you want a show that does this spectacularly well. Though, the execution falls short. Horribly, horribly short. Some episodes have enough setup that the viewer expects the episode to play the moral straight, and the twist comes in at an awkward, confusing interval. The other tag involves build-up for everyone's an asshat, but falls short since it's more aggravating to watch than really rewarding. For example, in the episode Pom Pom Girl, Sandra joins the cheerleading squad in an attempt to break them up from the inside out. Because clique wars and petty teenage drama, Birch and Liam become concerned when Sandra joins and seems legitimately engaged in their activities. Something that's uncharacteristic for her, apparently. She keeps her ridiculous evil plans a secret from Birch and Liam, reveling in their concern for her well-being for her own sadistic pleasure. Birch and Liam then sneak around and spy on her during practice. Liam even goes so far as recording one of her embarrassing routines on his phone. Recording his friend's embarrassing moment is one thing, but he later shows this display to a fellow classmate under the excuse it's for her own good. It's part of a terrible scheme to get Sandra to quit the cheerleading squad and return to being herself. While the episode tries to build up the cheerleaders as the big bads, the true bad guys are Sandra, Liam, and Birch for various reasons of their own. The viewer doesn't feel sympathy for anyone here, except maybe the cheerleaders. What would have helped would be if either Sandra or Birch and Liam were set up as a charismatic, strangely likable jerk, a Dan versus Brand protagonist. Why Dan becomes a jerk everyone roots for is because of how Chris or Elise are set up as a foil against him, how absurd he can get, and how far the envelope gets pushed. Here, if Rappy had played a stronger role as the voice of reason, or shared snippy back and forth with Birch or Sandra, the episode may have been stronger. Overall, My Life Me isn't the worst cartoon out there. In regards to picking a ridiculous teen cartoon to check out though, I'd recommend 16, Stoked, or Total Drama first. Especially 16 since it hits all the notes someone would be looking for, and My Life Me is a slice of life. A big group of friends hanging out, comedy, romance, etc. It's corny, but it's a pleasant feel-good kind of corny. It works well for what it is.